Today we're doing section 7.6, writing linear equations given a point and slope. We will be using the Pointslope formula. Homework is page 7.6, number page 331, number 1 through 22 odd, and 23 through 25. So, new vocabulary is Pointslope Form. And I wanted to kind of write out everything we've learned about so far and put it all together in a little list. We've talked about standard form of the equation, slope-intercept form of the equation. And so now we have point slope. And when I talk about all three of these, okay, these are all the same thing, just written in different forms. Now, I added the slope formula because I know people start to get confused. Slope formula is just looking for the m, given 2 points. But these three are all equations of a line, okay? So this is just a slope, and the other three are equations of a line, just written differently, okay? Continue. All right, take a minute. Let's do a warm-up, and I'd like each of you to write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. Figure out what your slope is, your y-intercept, and write the equation. Now let's check our work. So, on the first one, we have a y-intercept. My y-intercept is b, right? And that would be 1, 2, 3 up. And my slope is a rise of 1, 2, a rise of 2, and a run of 1. Now, I shouldn't see you guys doing this rise over run when you're graphing, okay? I'm just showing you what my activity is with my pencil. But if you start doing all those little bubbles, then I won't be able to read your graphs. So just do your rise over run kind of invisibly with your pencil. So my rise over run is 2 over 3. And that gives us y equals, remember, we're trying to get it to slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And so it becomes 2/3 x plus 3. Pause the recording if you haven't done the second one and do that now. Otherwise, let's get started. On this one, my b is 1, 2, 3, 4, -4. And my rise is +1. And then I go over 1, 2, 3, -3. So my m is +1 over 3 over -3. Whoops. If you leave out that negative, you would definitely get it wrong. And so this would become y equals -1/3 x minus 4. All right, moving on. All right, point slope form of the equation. Please write it down. Y minus y1 equals m, the slope, times the quantity of x minus x1. It looks very similar to a formula that we've used before. I'm going to have to pause it for a minute. Okay, so let's talk about where this point slope formula comes from. Let's start with our slope formula. Don't write this right now, just listen. So if I have m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, how would I get those x's alone? I mean, how would I get let's try and get the y's alone. So the first thing we'd need to do is get rid of everything in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply by x2 minus x1, right? Both sides. And then, look what we have. y2 minus y1 is equal to m times x2 minus x1. Now, the difference here is that I'm going to flip it around. Notice my point slope to here. I'm just going to flip it around. y2 minus y1 equals m times x2 minus x1. Now, the difference between our point slope formula is all we really need is 1 point. Here they have 2, so what I'm going to do is just use 1 point, and voila, we have the point slope formula. So point slope actually is derived from our slope formula. It's not just some random equation that we are looking. It looks similar to slope. It's got the y1, x1. And so I just wanted you to know that I'm not just having you memorize these random formulas. So point slope form is this, and the way we would use it is when given a slope and a point, the easiest equation to use is point slope. It's one of my favorites because I find it to be the quickest. All right, point slope. So the point goes in for y1 and x1. The slope is substituted in for the m. So I write my equation, and then I substitute in. So again, I'm putting, remember that we have an x and a y, right? So we're going to substitute the 5 for the y, the 2 for the x1, and the 3 for the m. Okay, so remember I'm substituting the point for the y1 and the x1 and the -3 for the slope. Now all you have to do is get y alone and you'll be in slope intercept. So we use it as a means, not as an ending. We use point slope. Notice the directions. It says write each equation of a line in point slope form that passes through. Well, actually they're not simplifying it now. Most time you give the answer in, we can now take it to slope intercept. All right, so we've got 3 forms of a line, and believe it or not, they're all 3 the same. The first one is standard form. We've talked about that. The second one is slope intercept form. That's where y is all alone. The first one in standard form, let me give you some, I would write these down. This is where x and y are on the same side of the equal sign. Okay, this is where y is alone. And this is where we use this when given 1 point and a slope. Okay, so just a few notes. Now these are all the same. So now here's really what we're going to be doing tonight. Sorry. Write the equation in slope intercept form that passes through. So they want it in slope intercept form. They're not telling you to use point slope, but they're giving us a point and a slope, so we use point slope. That's what they're doing. I want you to, okay? So now remember, this is x1, y1. So I'm going to substitute. We're only using 1 point, not for the y, but the y1. Y minus 6 equals let's go 3 times x minus 6. Oops, sorry, the x, -2. My coughing's getting the best of me. Okay, here we go. So now I have y minus 6. I'm going to simplify it. So now they want it in slope-intercept form, right? That's how they're asking us. And that means I got to get my y alone. So first thing I'm going to do is distribute. 3x. And I have plus 6. I'm adding 6. I'm adding 6. And I get y equals 3x plus 12. Okay? Let's see while they do it. Make sure I got the right. There we go. All right. Now remember, even though they're asking us, look at the directions, write the equation in slope-intercept form that passes through -2, 6. So this is how they want it. But this is what they're giving us, a point and a slope. So when a point and a slope are given, this is what you should use to get to this. Okay? Let's try another one. This time, you guys use point slope to get to slope-intercept form. Pause the recording. Now check your work. Start with my equation. I'm going to substitute in the 5 for the x, the -1 for the y, and remember there's also another negative there, and 3/5 for the m. 3/5 is the slope, x minus 5. Okay, I like to get rid of all my double signs, so I would do y plus 1 equals 3/5 x. I'm going to distribute 3/5 x, and then when I distribute to the 5s will cancel, so it will be -3. And now I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides, and now my final answer is in slope-intercept form, where y is alone, and it's easy to graph. Doesn't say to graph, but they're asking us for slope-intercept form. All right, write the equation of the line below in slope-intercept form. Well, we can use our point slope because we can figure out what a point is. Since we don't have access to a clear y-intercept, we can use a point and a rise over run, right? My slope would be, we just find any 2 points, and then I'm going to figure out what my rise is 2, my run is 3, -3, -2 over +3. And since I don't have a clear y-intercept, I'm going to go to so here we go. I'm going to use I'm going to substitute in. Remember, my -2 is my x1, my 3 is my y, and then I'm going to substitute y minus 3 equals -2/3, because that's the y, equals -2/3 times the quantity of x minus -2. I'm going to simplify my double signs. I'm going to distribute. Now, remember, I can't cross-cancel that 2 because it's a 2 over 1. So when I multiply 2 times 2, I get 4, and 3 times 1, I get 3. And now we really have to know our fraction works. So I'm going to be adding 3 to -4/3. That means I'm going to have to really switch this 3 to a common denominator, okay? So what I need to switch it to something with a 3 in the denominator. So what over 3, because I have to have a common denominator to add and subtract. So what over 3 equals 3? That would be 9. So I'm subtracting negative 4 over 3 plus 9 over 3. So all we're really doing is subtracting those numerators because one's negative and one's positive, right? So we subtract, and the difference is 5 over 3. And since the 9 over 3 is bigger number and it's positive, it stays positive. Right? These cancel, and here we are. And it says it wants it in slope-intercept form. So let me recap. Why didn't we just use the B? Because the B is in between two boxes. So we could use a point, any point, it didn't matter. I could choose this one. I could choose this one. Use the point, negative 2, 3. I think I used that first one. And then we found the slope, and we plugged them into, or we substituted them into point slope. Okay? Okay, this is actually the beginning of the lesson, but I like to do that first method because I think that when kids learn that first, they tend to gravitate to it. So let's look at your homework. Now, okay, I'll explain this. So if we know the slope and we know the y-intercept, we can write the equation in standard form, right? This time they want it in standard form. Before we can do that, if I have I have to put it into the slope-intercept form, okay? Y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to write this. I substitute my m, I substitute my b, and we're given this. To get it into standard form, I would subtract 3x from both sides, and then we have a standard form equation. Okay? So there's standard form. These three forms are kind of interchangeable, so you really have to read the directions and see what they're asking for. So notice it says in standard form, ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are integers, so you can't have fractions there. You'd probably have to clear a fraction. This is also equivalent to if I multiply everything by -1, I would get 3x minus y equals 2. Okay, so if we're doing this time they want it in standard form. I'm going to write some directions over here. Use slope-intercept. Pause the recording and see if you can do it. All right, let's try it. Y equals mx plus b. I'm going to substitute y equals 1/4 x plus -2. So I'm going to, instead of plus negative, it's really positive to -2. Now I'm going to convert it to standard form. Okay, I'm going to subtract 1/4 x. X and y are on the same side. The only problem is we're left with a fraction. So I don't like to start my equations with a negative, so I'm going to clear the fraction by multiplying both sides by -4. Or you can do +4. I would have done -4. Okay? If you had done -4, you would have gotten x minus 4y equals +8. But either one will work. 4 or -4. That's if you're multiplying by -4. I just don't like that negative to start my sentence. Okay, So we started with a slope and a y-intercept. Now, we're given a slope and a point in standard form. Here's another way, and I don't introduce this first because I really like you using point slope, because the name of it tells you what you have to use. But you can use slope intercept form. Now the slope, let's talk about. This represents, this is the slope. This is the y-intercept. And this is just the ordered pair, the x and the y. This is this is just the coordinate, the x comma y. So it's just an x comma y. So when given a point, that's where those would get substituted. There she is. Okay, so here we go. The y is 4, right? This is, right? So the y is 4. The x is 2, and the m is -1/5. So first they're putting in the slope, we'll put in the point. Okay, now I'm going to remind you, next to means multiplication. Once you put a number next to a number, you have to put it in parentheses. You can't just put it. You can put a number next to a variable and it means multiplication. So now really what I'm doing is multiplying by 2/1. So that becomes 4 equals -2/5 plus b. I have to add 2/5. I have to add 2/5. Okay, that will become 4 and 2/5 is equal to b. You can also change that to, I could have done it a couple other ways. I could have made this 20/5. Need the same common denominator, and that would become 22/5 equals b. So we know what b is. Either way. Now it says write it in standard form. So I'm going to, I think I'm going to use the fraction. Y equals, it said -1/5 x plus 22/5. So in standard form, we need the x and y on the same side. I'm adding 1/5 x, I'm adding 1/5 x. And I get 1/5 x plus y equals 22/5. Now for standard form, what's the big golden rule? It's multiply everything by 5. It can't have any fractions, so when I distribute here, I'm going to get an x. When I distribute here, I get plus 5x. And when I distribute here, we get 22. So here is our equation. Now, know that this and this are the same. Personally, I like you using point slope. I think it's a lot easier, a lot less work, because once you find this, kids tend to stop. They forget to put it into the equation and take it to standard form. Now, you have to read the directions every time. It's not going to always say standard form. It's not going to always say, but if we are doing point slope, now I personally say let's use point slope, and you can use it every time. Okay, so here I am, y minus, I'm going to eventually get there. But I'm going to use, since given a point and given a slope, I'm going to use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So y minus, the first y is -2 equals the slope, -3/7. 3/7 times x minus, and I have 1. Okay? Now I'm going to just distribute it. Get the y alone, move the x over. Y plus 2 equals negative 3/7 x plus 3/7. Okay? Now to get the, I have to subtract 2. Subtract 2. Now we're going to need a common denominator. So when I write 2 over here, instead of writing it as 2, put it right here, I need something that has a denominator of 7. What over 7 equals 2? 14. So it's going to be a negative 14. Here we go. I get y equals negative 3/7x minus, right, takes the sign of the bigger number. Since one's positive, the other's negative. It's going to be minus 11/7. Y equals negative 3/7x minus 11/7. Now, if we want to go to standard form, we have to move the x over and get rid of the fractions. So I'll start that over here. Y equals negative 3/7 x minus 11/7. So I'm going to add 3/7 x. I'm adding 3/7 x, and here we go. Y plus 3/7 x equals negative 11/7. Now it doesn't matter. I guess we should put the x first. I'm going to multiply everything by 7. And then we get 7y plus 3x equals negative 11. Could have turned it around. So we used point slope. We went to slope. We started with a point and a slope. We plugged it, we substituted into point slope. We moved to slope intercept. And then we moved to standard form. It's a long one today. Okay, now I could have substituted it into y equals mx plus b and then gone. Now, write a linear equation. Look at what they're giving us here. They're giving us an x-intercept. That's not a place in y equals mx plus b because the m is a slope, the b is a y-intercept, and the x and y are the point. So there's no, but what an x-intercept does tell us is that it's an ordered pair. It's 4, 0. So that's a point they're giving us. Remember, our x-intercept has a 0. Okay? Both of our intercepts have 0, so you could use that as the point. So in that case, we're using the point. Okay, let's try it in the y equals mx plus b. I can substitute in the slope. I can substitute in the point. And then we can go, basically we're substituting it in. I get 12/5. Once I figure out what b is, I substitute it into the equation, and then I move my x over and get rid of the fraction. Multiply everything by -5 or 5. Okay, if we multiplied by negative, it would be the opposite. 3x minus 5y equals positive 12. All right. So part 2 of this is what happens if we're given 2 points and no slope. What we have the ability to find is the slope. Okay? We have the ability to find is the slope. Okay, so if I have the ability, they give me 2 points. Remember, for point slope, we need a point and a slope. So let's find the slope first. Remember the slope formula? That is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals the slope. Please make sure you write full formulas. I knock off points in homework if for each problem you're not using your formulas. Okay, so I'm going to substitute in. Remember, for the y's, like doing this, 5 minus 3 over 4 minus negative 2. Don't forget that extra negative, which simplifies to 2 over 6, which is 1/3. So we have m equals 1/3. Now that we know that, we get to choose either point. We get to choose either point. Okay? Doesn't matter which point. You'll get to the same place. I'm going to choose I personally, let's try this. Well, they're substituting it in here, but I want to show you. We're going to choose either point. And we can substitute it here, or we can substitute it into y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We can use either point and a slope and substitute it into the one of 2 methods. So if I substitute it into point slope, I get to choose. I'm going to choose this one because it doesn't have any negatives. I think I'll choose this one actually because I think it's going to give me, no, this first one. Yeah, because if x were a multiple of 3, then I would have used it. Okay, so I'm substituting in y minus the first y is 5. I don't need both points. Okay, just one equals m is 1/3. And then we have x minus, and the other point is, the other coordinate is 4. So here we go. Y minus 5 equals 1/3 x minus 4/3. Now the problem is I got to get y alone. I'm going to add 5, but over here I'm going to call that 5 something different. What over 3, I'm going to have a common, would be 15. So y equals 1/3 x minus or plus 11/3. And there we have it in slope-intercept form. Okay, now if I had substituted it in here, I'm just substituting the 4 for the x and the 5 here. Okay. And there we are in slope-intercept form. Okay, for tonight, in the first part where they give you the point and the slope, I would like you to start. They're going to give you a point and a slope, and I want you to start in point slope. Actually, you're doing 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. So there's 6 problems. You should do 6 where you're putting the point and a slope into slope-intercept. You should put 3 in slope-intercept, where you start at y equals mx plus b, and do 3 problems where you start at point slope. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I want you to build your tool belt for algebra. Okay? I'd like you to start with this. And then same thing, when we get the slope, we're going to do the same thing. So here I'm doing, first thing we have to do is find our slope. Okay? This PowerPoint's biased, by the way. So it's 11/4. One more time. Let's go to slope, point slope. And you have to look at the way, I want you to make sure you're paying attention to the directions. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. The reason, let me try both ways for you. The reason why I like this way is because when you get y alone, you're done. The reason why I don't like it when you substitute it into y equals mx plus b, because once you find the b, people forget to write the equation. So, if I have my slope, I'm substituting it in. I can choose either point. That makes an easy one. I guess in this case, both would be pretty easy too. The other one would have probably been easier. So then I have y equals 11 over 4x. And then I have to subtract 3, we can't subtract from the x, so I get y equals 11 over 4 minus 3. Now, what bothers me about using the other method, y equals x plus b, I'm putting the point in, it's negative 3 equals 11 over 4, x is 0, plus b. b equals negative 3. But we're not done. This is what kids forget to do. You have to put it back into y equals, the m is 11 over 4, x minus 3. So one of two ways, and I want you to split it up and practice both. Okay? All right. I'm going to pass on the charts because it's a 40-minute video. That's our lesson for the day. Now, be careful on the homework. All answers, they do not want it in standard form. You are just putting it into, write an equation and put them all into slope-intercept form, okay? Answer is always going to be in the y equals mx plus b, get y alone.